Let's talk about an ellipse. An ellipse is the set of all points in a plane whose distance from two fixed points called the foci. So what we're talking about here is we have a focus here and a focus here. We have the major axis, which is the longest diameter through the widest part of the ellipse and the center, and the minor axis, which is the shortest diameter at the narrowest part of the ellipse and the center, where the center is where the major and the minor axis intersect, and the ellipse hits the co-vertex, which is on the minor axis, and the vertex, which is on the major axis. The eccentricity is the measure of how unround the ellipse is. It is B, which is from the center to the co-vertex, and A, which is the measure from the center to the vertex. So the eccentricity, E, is the square root of A squared minus B squared all over A. If E equals 0, then we have a circle. If E is between 0 and 1, then we have an ellipse. The general form of an ellipse is a squared plus by squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals to 0, where a and b are not 0, and a, b, d, e, f are all integers. Now, my husband would argue that those do not have to be integers, but they could be real values. For an ellipse, A and B are not equal. For a circle, A and B are equal. For the standard form, okay, so that is x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals to 1, where hk is our center, then we know that we are parallel to the x-axis if we have that A is greater than B. So our major axis is parallel to the x-axis if A is greater than B. We know the length of the major axis is 2A. We know the coordinates of the vertices are h plus or minus a, comma k, because our major axis is parallel to the x-axis, so that means that we're shifting either left or right. So we're shifting our ellipse left or right because we're parallel to the x-axis. The length of the minor axis is 2b. The coordinates of the co-vertex is h, comma, k plus or minus b. The coordinates of the foci is h plus or minus c, comma, k, where c equals c squared equals a squared minus b squared. For an ellipse, that c squared equals a squared minus b squared does not change. You need to write this entire slide on a 3x5 card. And in 2 slides, I'm going to show you a picture of parallel to the x-axis and parallel to the y-axis. On this 3x5 card, you're going to want to include the parallel to the x-axis picture. I just couldn't include the picture here because it's too big. If I'm parallel to the y-axis, our standard form is x minus h squared over b squared, and y minus k squared over a squared equals 1. So in this case, a squared is under the y, and b is greater than a. The length of our major axis is 2a. The coordinate of our vertices, of our vertex or our vertices, is h, comma, k plus or minus a. This time we're adding our a value to our k because we're moving our ellipse up and down. The length of our minor axis is 2b. The coordinates of our co-vertex is h plus or minus b. comma, k. The coordinates of our foci is h, comma, k plus or minus c, where c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Again, that c squared does not change. It's always a squared minus b squared for an ellipse. Okay, again, you need to write this on a 3x5 card. Here is our graph. So if I'm parallel to the x-axis, our ellipse is open and flatter. If I'm parallel to the y-axis, it's long and narrow vertically. And so on your 3x5 card, include the one on the left with your parallel to the x-axis, and include the one to the right with your parallel to the y-axis. You will be given a formula sheet to use for your test. Sketch the graph and discuss the given ellipse. So I have x squared over 25 plus y squared over 49 equals 1. Is the denominator under the x squared or the denominator under the y squared bigger? And again, I'm going to encourage you right now to use your card that I suggested that you write so that you know which one you're looking at. For this one, the denominator under the y squared is bigger, so that means that we're parallel to the y-axis. This tells us that b is greater than a, so their ellipse is parallel to the y-axis. We know that a squared equals 49, so a equals 7. We know that b squared equals 25, so b equals 5. C squared equals a squared minus b squared. C squared equals 49 minus 25, which is 24. So C equals 2 square roots of 6. Our center is HK, which is 0, 0. Since we're parallel to the y-axis, so we have that our vertex is 0 plus or minus 7. We know that our co-vertex, we're adding our B to plus or minus the H, so that's plus or minus 5 is our co-vertex. We add our C value to the K to get our foci, so we have 0 equals plus or minus 2 square roots of 6. Our major axis is x equals 0, which is the y-axis. Our minor axis is y equals 0, which is the x-axis. When we draw this out, we have that our major axis is the y-axis, our minor axis is the x-axis. We're at 0, 7, and negative 7. Our foci is 0, 2 square roots of 6, and negative is 0, negative 2 square roots of 6. And our co-vertices are negative 5, 0, and 5, 0. Sketch the graph and discuss the given ellipse. 9x squared plus y squared equals 9. The first thing we're going to do is divide by 9 to put this in standard form. So we have x squared over 1 plus y squared over 9 equals 1. This tells us that a squared is 9, which means a is 3. B squared is 1, so b is 1, not 5. C squared is 9 minus 1, which is 8. So C is 2 square roots of 2. Then we find our information. This information, the center, the vertex, the co-vertex, the foci, the major axis, the minor axis, this is all the information that I'm going to ask from you on the test or the quiz. Our center is 0, 0. Our vertex is 0 plus or minus 3, which is A added to K, because 9 is bigger than 1, we know that this is parallel to the y-axis. So we're adding our A value to K. So our vertex is 0 plus or minus 3. Our co-vertex plus or minus 1, 0. Our foci is 0 plus or minus 2 square roots of 2. Our major axis is the y-axis. Our minor axis is the x-axis. And we have the graph. Find the equation of the ellipse with center 0, 0, vertex 0, 13, foci 0, negative 5. The center 0, 0 tells us that HK is 0, 0. The vertex 0, 13 tells us that A is 13, which tells us that A squared is 169. The foci 0, 5 tells us that C is plus or minus 5, which tells us that C squared is 25. Since A squared is 169, we know that the major axis is x equals 0, which is the vertical, and we know that the minor axis is y equals 0, which is the horizontal. Since C squared is 25, we know that C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So 25 equals 169 minus B squared. Then we can find that B equals plus or minus 12, and B squared equals 144. So we have the standard form y squared. We have the standard form y squared over 169 plus x squared over 144 equals 1. Our LCD is 144 times 169. We multiply our standard form by our LCD, and we have our general form is 144 y squared plus 169 x squared equals 144 times 169. We can then move the 144 times 169 to the other side and set it equal to 0. I didn't because I assumed you could set it equal to 0. Find the standard form of the ellipse. Identify the center, the vertex, the covertex, the focus, foci, major axis, minor axis, a squared, b squared, and c squared. The general form is 9x squared plus 25y squared plus 54x minus 50y minus 119 equals 0. First thing we're going to do is we're going to regroup all the x terms and all the y terms, move the 119 to the other side, and we're going to factor out the 9 from all the x terms and the 25 from the y terms. This yields us 9 parentheses x squared plus 6x plus a blank plus 25 parentheses y squared minus 2y plus a blank equals 119. And I have left 2 blanks to add the terms that we're going to get from completing the square. Half of 6 squared, and we get 9. So we're going to add 9. Half of 2 squared is 1. So we're going to add the 1. When we actually added the 9, that's actually 9 times 9 is 81. When we added the 1, that was actually adding 25. When we factor things down, we have 9 parentheses x plus 3 squared plus 25 parentheses y minus 1 squared equals 225. Dividing both sides by 225, we have 9 parentheses x plus 3 squared over 225 plus 25 parentheses y minus 1 squared over 225 equals 225 over 225. Simplifies to x plus 3 squared over 25 plus y minus 1 squared over 9 equals 1. So we have a center of negative 3, 1. We have a squared is 25, so a is 5. B squared is 9, so b is 3. C squared is 16, so c is 4. We found c squared because c squared is a squared minus b squared, which simplifies down to 16, and the square root of 16 is 4. 25 is bigger than 9. X is our major axis. Our major axis is y equals 1. It's going to be the y value of our center. So to find our vertex, we're going to take our a value and add it to our h value. So our h value is negative 3. So our h value is negative 3. Our a value is 5. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. So that's how I came up with 2, 1. We have negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. So our two vertices are 2, 1 and negative 8, 1. Our covertex is our b value added to our k in our center. So that's 1 plus or minus 3. So 1 plus 3 is 4. For our foci, so we've done this and we've done this. Now we need to find our foci. For our foci, we add our C values to our H. We're parallel to which axis? We're parallel to our x-axis. So we add them to our H. So we're adding them to our H because we're parallel to our x-axis. So this is to our K, this is to our H. So we're adding 4 to negative 3. So we're at 1. So there is one foci. And then we add negative 3 minus negative 4. So we're at negative 7. And there's our other foci. And that's kind of what your ellipse should look like. Find the equation of the ellipse in general form given the center, the focus, and the vertex. So given the center, that tells us that HK is negative 1, 1. Since all the y values are 1, we know that our major axis is y equals 1. Since our focus is H plus C equals 1, we know that H is negative 1, then we find that C equals 2, so C squared equals 4. Since our vertex is H plus A equals 2, then we have negative 1 plus A equals 2. So then A equals 3, so A squared equals 9. C squared equals A squared minus B squared. Then 4 equals 9 minus B squared. So B squared equals 9 minus 4 equals 5. So B equals the square root of 5. Our standard form then is x plus 1 squared over 9 plus y minus 1 squared over 5 equals 1. Our LCD is 45. When we multiply through by 45, we get 5 parentheses x plus 1 squared plus 9 times y minus 1 squared equals 45. And we expand that, we get 5 parentheses x squared plus 2x plus 1 plus 9y squared minus 2y plus 1 equals 45. 5x squared plus 10x plus 5 plus 9y squared minus 18y plus 9 minus 45. So we have 5x squared plus 10x plus 9y squared minus 18 minus 31 equals 0. And that would be your general form. Please let me know if you have any questions. Now, for all these last examples, I use the information on my card. So right here is where I would use the information on my card to make sure that I was getting the information correctly. Now, the formula sheet I'm going to post so that you know what you're going to be getting for the test. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.